thank you so much for showing up today, and thank you so much for showing interest in this particular topic. So now I request the chair and the panelists to come over to the dais, and then I will introduce them by name and by their designation individually. So now I request Syed Abu Ahmed Akif, who will be the chair of this session. And we have 4 panelists so far. The first one is Syed Mahmood Nasser, who is the Inspector General of Forest and Ministry of Climate Change. Is he around? Right. Now I request Professor Asim Zia to come to the dais, please, sir. Now I request Engineer Nasir A. Gilani to come to the dais, please, sir. And now I request Dr. Rehana Siddiqui to come over to the dais, sir. So thank you so much. The chair, a brief introduction is, he is the member in the Pakistan Administrative Services, retired, and he is the former secretary to the government of Pakistan. Professor Asim Zia, he is a professor at the Public Policy and Computer Sciences at the University of Vermont, USA. Engineer Nasir A. Gilani is a senior chief at the water section at the Planning Commission of Pakistan, and Dr. Rehana Siddiqui, the former joint director at Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. So over to you, Chair, and then you can start the session. And approximately, I think, 12 to 15 minutes will be devoted for the every panelist, and then at the end we will take the questions from the audience.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulihil Kareem. Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Zaman Saab, Dr. Zaman, and Asif Zia Saab, Dr. Rehana Siddiqui Sahaba, Gilani Sahaba. It's my privilege and pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I think my only reason for being here is that I was Secretary of Climate Change for about 2 years, and that's why they probably roped me in. Yesterday I was informed that they'd like me to be here, and so I think I'll just wind up. I mean, the situation of the environment in Pakistan, Dr. Asim was just mentioning, he has just returned from Poland yesterday, where the COP24 is taking place, and apparently, although I was also supposed to be there, but I didn't go there, and apparently it's a big failure, because I think humanity is still not interested in saving itself, because America, Russia, now Brazil also has joined them. They still feel that climate change is not real, it's not here. Let's see when we realize it. Things are, for a country like Pakistan, which is consistently at below 10 in terms of the vulnerable countries in the world, although we don't pollute to our share. If it had been a fair world, our population is about 2.5%, but our share of the greenhouse gases is less than 1%. While America, which is 5% of the world's population, pollutes about 16%. And just the top 4 pollutants, Russia, India, America, they produce about 50% of the world's greenhouse gases. For a country like Pakistan, it's very difficult to really, say that we're not polluting enough, and yet we are very vulnerable. We are vulnerable for a number of reasons, and primarily our big population, because our population mostly lives in vulnerable areas, because half of the country is so arid that it does not have a very big population base. And so the poor people are forced to live in areas which will be very vulnerable to climate change. Environment, we all know Pakistan is not doing enough to save its environment. Just some glaring examples. When I was at the Ministry of Climate Change, the total development budget, initially for the first year, it was 27 million rupees. Yes, 27 million rupees, which would not buy you a flat or a house in Islamabad. And it increased to 600 million rupees in my second year, but that is also less than 0.1% of the development budget. The development budget is about 1,000 billion rupees. Had we had 1 billion rupees, it would have been 0.1%. So we were about somewhere 0.06% of the development budget. Although climate change and environment are overarching subjects, I mean, they're everybody's baby. It's in agriculture, it's in water, it's in industry, and so everybody needs to do something. But I guess we have come across that proverb before. Everybody thought that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. So things are bad. Karachi pumps out 500 million gallons of wastewater every day into the sea. So things are very bad. We all keep hearing about the water, which is, we are now a water stressed country, but the national water policy also states that 50% of the water is wasted. So while we are trying to build a dam for 7 million acre feet, we are probably wasting 70 million acre feet every year. So no matter how many dams we build, if we are not good on the conservation side, we'll just, that development will wither away. So I think having said that little bit, I would request the panelists to make their presentations or their contributions, and then we will wind up the session. Should I begin from the right? Yeah, because in Saudi Arabia they say bil yamin, so.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Indeed, it is a great honor to be with such educated class, having the Honorable former Secretary Climate Change, which ended at the head of the Civil Service as a Secretary Cabinet. And I'm also very pleased to see Dr. Pervez Tahir, a very eminent Planning Commission person, and Vice Chancellor PIDE and my fellow colleagues. Let me speak to this, that let's prove there is a reality in climate change. I start from where the Honorable Secretary, former Secretary ended. He's a former Secretary in terms of the government, but for us, he's always near to us. The way he supported the cause, we are thankful to him all around as subjects. I would be speaking that let's talk about Pakistan. Pakistan starts from glaciers and ends up at the coastline, and in between there are cities and the wetlands and like that. And what threats, what impacts, and what is going to happen, and how we can reduce the damage. It is a damage control because we produce much less greenhouses. Any reduction in greenhouses in Pakistan will not benefit as much Pakistan as we can do in those measures which is a damage control or disaster risk management. So my presentation today, or what my speech to you, is something very informal. So I say that if we go to the glaciers, the Gulf is there. And then if you come to the plains, you find the water shortages which hit the urban centers. So earlier it was considered an agriculture business, but now we have mega cities and mega issues. In Karachi, the riots are likely to happen, and Quetta is likely to migrate, and Lahore is drinking fluoride water. So it's business of everybody. And if you talk about agriculture, it's not the agriculture in terms of GDP, which is your business. For me as a human, it is, number one is employment, and which is called SDG 1, which says poverty. Number 2 is hunger. So it is all around agriculture, where we have about 40% livelihoods coming from agriculture. And if it comes to those sensitive areas which are part of discussion, the delta, the shrinking lakes, the wetlands, and the coastline, I will share about 1 minute about each. Next slide. My saying is this: after serving about 35 years as head of water sectors in several ministries, that the climate travels in Pakistan through water. Whether it is glaciers, whether it is a drought, whether it is a flood, whether it is cyclone, whether it is shrinking wetlands, whether it is seawater intrusion. So climate change, direct visible impact starts from water. Next. And here is a very famous thing, but I related it to the latest research. This is my 18. That it's not the Pakistan alone. Hindu Kush area, Karakoram area, Himalayan area, all that 4 big river basins here are facing an impact of ice melt, the glacier melt, and change in their flows, and the reduction in the density of the and thickness of the glacier ice. Size may be taking not that much, but if you look into the density and that thickness and the volume of water there, that is changing very much. Next. And this shows a research which is not very visible here. This is done by ICIMOD, and I was part of that in the sense with the Pakistan Indus Basin, that all 4 basins are threatened because livelihood, these glaciers are water storage, they are water towers which makes the rivers to flow perennially. Next please. And then what I spoke, that was just perception. The reality is also there, sir. The figures are there by GIS and the survey and the remote sensing, that there are emerging lakes in the glaciers. Emerging lakes have a direct evidence that ice and the glaciers are converting into water, which means there is more heat there. Next. And then happens to be an engineer. I'm very proud to be telling everybody I'm an engineer. I served in civil service, but an engineering solutions are needed. Because now a hazard can come. The outburst of the lakes would not be the flow which we consider as a normal hydrodynamics flows. They will contain mud, they will contain debris, and they will have quantity of flow and a velocity of flow, which will have 2 type of impacts on downstream structures. One is the flow, one is the velocity, the thrust. If you look to the thrust factor also, our whole dam failure engineering, because for all dams we go for the dam failure model prepared by US Corps of Engineers, which is essential for a dam to be looked into, that is based on hydrodynamics of hydrology. But this will be an additional thrust which will have a high velocity and which have debris into that. Most of the research on the dam break models have been done in the areas where debris don't enter. Debris do enter in Malaysia, in Indonesia, where there is soil is not that stable, but then the height of mountains is very low. So that contains the debris effect and others, but does not contain the velocity effect. If you add debris volume, it is just you are hit by a car which is Suzuki, and then you are hit by a truck which is Hino, because the weight and the velocity will add certainly much more power to that system. Next. And that requires now that we put lot of careful examination, analysis, and informed decisions on the safety of the designs of the structures. This is not only for the water side, this is not for the dam, but all those people who live downstream, because that can affect the life and the property, and even certain those monuments which cannot be rebuilt, and the life is more important than monuments even. Next please. Then from mountains, if we come down to the plains, I spoke for agriculture earlier, but the urban factor has not been incorporated. There used to be, sir, a Ministry of Urban Affairs which was devolved, and the Ministry of Environment was created. Then Ministry of Environment was devolved, and then Ministry of Climate became. Urban water is not counted anywhere, because Ministry of Water and Power take care of the water which is used for power, dams and others. Ministry of Agriculture take care of the water which is used in water courses and irrigation. But who look after the urban waters, which has become a very, very important issue for us? As I shared with you, it is not the matter of Karachi and Quetta only, it is a matter of Islamabad also. Here there are sectors which are haves and not haves. There is a tanker mafia also like Karachi merging up. And Gwadar CPAC, I just left a CPAC meeting for this, cannot become a reality until Gwadar has a water. And this is very, very important sheet, sir, which shows that all that world is facing water shortage in the urban centers. About 400 million people have this issue, but this will grow to 1 billion if as usual scenario stays. But if a temperature rise of 1.5 C goes, additional 350 million people will enter into that water short people, and it goes for 2 degree, it will be about 700 more people coming in. It is very strange that how the temperature increase will impact the water availability to the cities. Let me share with you. Because the water will be more consumed in agriculture because of the crop water requirements. Secondly, the more temperature will require you to consume more water as a human being also. Next. So this is just a map which shows how disaster will increase from 1.5 to 2. This is a small difference, look like 1.5 and 2, but the disaster would be much larger on that. Next, please. Now, if we come to the solutions, multiple solutions I have proposed for Karachi. The river water diversions, the storages, the groundwater, desalination. But, sir, what you pointed out, efficient use of water. I was working now last week that how we use water in Karachi, in London, in Delhi and Kuala Lumpur. All have different dimensions. And it is a matter of shame that Kuala Lumpur, which has a lot of water rich by monsoon, lot of rich in money, lot of oil for energy, they are using half the water per capita of Karachi. And Delhi, which has a very high temperature, they are using again lesser water than Karachi per capita. London, which is very socially developed city, they are also using. It means that either water is theft or water is not used the way it should be used. So I have made certain calculations on how to count on not going on per capita because that is a very, very difficult debate. So, sir, I have invented per household because from satellite we can count the household. From satellite we cannot count the population, but household we can do, and on that basis. So that is an issue. With the climate change, also the urban issue. Earlier it was considered the issue of the coastline or the glaciers, or at most agriculture. I say it is an issue for urban area also. Next. Wetlands are shrinking. A case study in Planning Commission has been done on Manshar Lake, sir. Largest lake in Pakistan, 4th largest lake of the fresh water in Asia. It is now lost 1/3 of the area, because the evaporation is higher than the inflows are coming. So ultimately, when it reduces that, the quality is also deteriorating because all the salts and pollutants, they are making concentration into that. Next, please. So this is evidence based on satellite of Manshar Lake, that how it is shrinking. The whitish area was used to be earlier part of that lake. Next. From lakes, if we go down to the delta, that is something very important for the livelihood of the people living there. These are the people who are the son of the soils. They are living there from centuries, their livelihood, their culture. And then it is Pakistan soil. It's Pakistan resources. So everything is in danger, and this all is with the facts and figures, not in perception. The delta has finished. Delta is in a serious danger. Next. And seawater intrusion. Seawater intrusion, first I spoke the issues, but this seawater intrusion start from the solutions first. First thing is why the seawater intrusion is coming is the climate change. It's not the only factor of the reduction in flows. It is a change in the wind direction towards south, which taking waves. It is also have an impact of reduction in the protection of the vegetative cover there, because the vegetation reduce the wave strength and backwater waves, and that reduce the strength of the water to invade into the lines. Next will give you statistics. Here, next, this tells you the coastline. If your delta is gone, but the coastline is over than the delta line, and the coastline is much more than, is about 1,000 kilometers in Sindh and Balochistan. We are continuously losing land, 15 meters 19 meters, an average 19 meters per year. So that loss is a national loss. And that could not be done only by flows. That has to be done such as structural measures, the engineering solutions has to come. And biological solutions has to come. Mangroves have different varieties which can grow. In Ghana I visited, they have using mangroves plantation which does not require the fresh water put in. Next please. So these are some satellite imageries and which shows that how our mangrove forest was protecting the coastline. Next. Next is, I'm here to answer so many questions because my subject was covering landscape of Pakistan, so it will have gaps. So you are welcome to ask me any question. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I request Dr. Asim Zia, who has come from the US, and to make his presentation, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate this. Thank you to the PIDE, and as well as it's been a pleasure. Dr. Nasir have already set the context for what's going on, so I'm just going to talk about climate, food, energy, water security issues in the Indus Basin, how we can think about food, energy, water nexus, what are the resilience options. So that's my setting the stage for, I want to contrast two policy design options that since PIDE and Planning and Development Division is actively engaged in policy design to tackle this, what's coming. And I think we have like neoclassical economic model versus ecological economics model, and I want to kind of like lay out those two contrasting policy options in the context of the emerging scenario. So I want to pose a question to the audience that, can anybody tell me how long a human being can survive without water, without drinking water? 3 days, sir? 3 days. And how many days can you survive without food? So, I mean, 21 days would be like Gandhi, or like more like monks, but earlier numbers were. So we're looking at 3 days to 21 days, right, sir? And I think my last question would be, what would happen if you don't have water to drink? What would be the most natural response of that person to do? Or the food to, if they don't have the water or food, what would be the most likely response of that person to do? So they will, if the tail is available, ji, agar tail milega to, right? So they will most likely migrate. They'll go someplace else to look for that. Ji. So now I want you to think about what's happening is that I'm just coming from United Nations Conference of Parties meeting. Right now we are looking at basically under the Paris Treaty, if everybody enforces their commitments, we're looking at about, I would say 600 to 700 carbon dioxide concentration scenario. For 2 degrees centigrade world, we need to have 500 parts per million centigrade, 500 parts per million CO2 concentrations, limit the atmospheric concentrations to that level. But under the current scenario, World Bank, for example, just issued a report last year about 4 degrees centigrade world. But our scientific assessments from some of the global circulation models that we've been looking at, we're looking at going anywhere from 4 to 6 degrees centigrade by the end of this century. Under the long-term scenarios, the IPCC report, the last report that came out, and the next one that is being prepared, by the end of 2200, we're looking at about 10 to 12 degrees, so about 1,200 parts per million scenario. By 2250, by 2300, because the world is not going to stop at 2100. We're looking at 2200, 2300. By the time we've burned all the fossil fuels on which we are on that trajectory, we'll be anywhere from 1750 to 1800 parts per million. And that could lead to a rise of anywhere from 8 to 10 to even 12 degrees centigrade, depending on the response of the climate, the atmosphere to that. So last time that happened, that was 250 million years ago. That was the end of the Permian age. The sea level was many, many feet above. where it is now. And about 90% of the life on the Earth was wiped out, the marine life, and this recently, just last week, a study came out in the Science. So this is like the scenario. I hope that we have some global cooperation that emerges. But from the climate change scenario, Pakistan is, as we heard before, one of the most vulnerable regions, especially because we have a glacial melt in this basin. It's glacial melt, and it's dependent on the monsoons. Our latest research shows that, as you already saw some of the data, that, and we have been looking at some of these hydrological models like that can use to predict what would be the scenarios in 2050 or 2060. We're looking at scenarios of glacial melt that would basically have seasonal impact on sometimes in the year, because those glaciers act as natural storage of the water. We wouldn't have water when we need the most when the glaciers melt and we get them for the cropping in the downtown. About 90% of the water comes downstream is used in the agriculture sector in Pakistan. So the question is in the food security. A lot of the water is also used for hydropower dams, Bela, Mangla, and other dams that we are building. So it's a question of energy. If there is no water, when you need it the most, you won't be able to utilize your existing dams to the capacity. It's already been seen in India and Pakistan that the dams during the dry seasons are not being utilized at the maximum capacity. Then, of course, as the issues were pointed out in terms of the silt and some of these other debris coming into those, that would shorten the life of those dams. But I want to come back to the food security challenge. I was part of a risk assessment strategy in the US Department of Defense, where we were looking at some of the most critical areas at the global scale, where the most risk is of violence from climate change-induced water shortages. And Pakistan has been identified as one of the most dangerous places where the violence can emerge, where it's already happening. Some of the other places that we have been identified in the studies that have emerged is drought started to happen in Sudan, in the Sahel region, in 70s. That led to the Darfur crisis. That led to the migration of the people from northern Sudan to southern Sudan. Sudan was split into two countries. And we have like a situation now that the war is going on ever since then. Syria, 2 years ago, there was a paper that came out in Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, as well as in Science. The drought that happened in Syria in 2006 led to the migration of farmers from rural areas to the urban areas. Earlier on in a panel, a Chinese guy said that, it was Arab Spring that caused the Syrian crisis. I will contest that. I think that it was the drought that basically tipped off the already existing politically volatile situation into a civil war. So in the case of Pakistan, the drought, if we look at the last 20 years of data, we already have drought going on in rural Sindh and Balochistan. The projections are even for worse drought. The floods, so with climate change, we're getting not only looking at the mean levels of water decrease or increase, we're also looking at the changes in the variability of that. So the 2010, 2011 floods that we got, 20 million people were displaced. Many of them have been permanently displaced. They lost their livestock. The floods, we're not prepared for floods. We're not prepared for droughts. We are not prepared for heat waves. But the problem here is that the risk of violence and civil war is more important because our political institutions and our policymakers are not ready to embrace the reality. They're living in a bubble that's been created by the elites of this country. They think that they're living in a system and they can simply ignore 40% of the people in this country are below poverty. The poverty trend is increasing since last 20 years. You can look at the World Bank data. The hunger, the amount of people who are hungry, who are without water, is going up. It's not going down. Our infrastructure is failing. I think that now is the time for us to think about what we can do. There are some real options on the table. There are two ways that we can tackle this. One is the neoclassical pathway, which is we do it with big, massive globalization approach, build mega dams, build infrastructure, move the people where they are in the vulnerable regions, identify hotspots, make sure that those people are not exposed to the risks of flooding and droughts and heat waves, move the people around. Those are known as like what we call globalization pathway, neoclassical approach. You kind of like implement the policies in a way, the investments you have, the policy portfolio you build, basically would make that kind of like risk. You can improve the efficiency of the system. You can give like subsidies to the people through safety net mechanisms that would improve the kind of like the people who are exposed to hunger and energy insecure. They would be provided access to those through the state mechanisms, right? So that is the pathway that we are almost on with, and I think with CPAC, if I dare to say, we are on that path. That we are basically on the path to building massive infrastructure projects, which would definitely bring economic development, but it would also have downside to that. So let me talk about the downsides of that approach. We know that the rise of the populism is happening because of the increasing inequity. The neoclassical model of economic development does not tackle the problem of poverty alleviation. It does not tackle the problem of inequity. You have to have, government has to intervene to redistribute the resources. Otherwise, the free markets do not take care of the poor people by themselves. That is well-known fact. And when IMF and World Bank and these agencies try to promote these neoclassical models or neoliberal models of economic development in developing countries like Pakistan, they basically, as you might have seen in the cases of Greece and many other countries, those austerity drives. Pakistan has gone through already 12 austerity drives. We are already looking at 13th or 14th austerity drive if we have to go to IMF for this. Or even with Chinese investments, they're not going to just dole us like peanuts, or maybe it might be 60 billion or whatever, but there are commitments. We need to pay back those resources to them. That is not going to have, it's not a grant, it's a loan. We have to pay those back. So I think equity and poverty alleviation, vulnerable populations, if we want to avoid the civil war, if we want to avoid the violence, the other path is that we grow self-reliant, indigenous method to tackle this problem, where I'll bring me to my final point, is the nature-based solutions, ecological economics. We need to think about, there are ways that we can produce food that protects the small farmers. We can empower the communities where they can grow their own energy sources depending on what is available to them, whether it is sun, whether it is wind, whether it is geothermal, whether it is coal. I think like even the communities who have coal, we have to be pragmatic. Use the local resources, empower the communities to do that. And I think the nature-based solutions, as we heard about the destruction of the wetlands, destruction of riparian zones in the rivers and streams, nature-based solutions and ecosystem service-based approaches can be integrated in the policy designs. And I think my final point is that policymakers need to think about an economic development approach that is ecological economics based, where the policies are designed to protect the poor, to protect the most vulnerable, as well as incentivize the implementation and design of ecosystem service-based solutions to food, energy, water security problems. Thank you very much for paying attention.
Thank you, Dr. Asim. And now finally, I'd request Dr. Rehana Siddiqui for her presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, the PhD organizers and PIDE, to give me this opportunity to say something about an issue which is, I think, important, although at the policy making level or at the aggregate level we don't allocate sufficient resources for it, but we have heard that it is becoming a critical issue. Although I think Abu Akif sir may will agree with me that before the climate change, I think Ministry of Environment was much further down as compared to it is now. at least the climate change had made it this realization to the policymakers that there is a need for environmental protection and all these things. That is, has given some importance to this Ministry of Climate Change and Ministry of Environment. I was going to ask Asim Zia Saab that when he was saying that temperature will go up by 10 degrees Celsius if we continue with this. Well, I mean, if it goes up, what does it make? Maybe we will be facing what we are also currently there is literature saying sixth extinction, which has come up. So maybe it would be seventh or eighth extinction where the globe will be. There would be no population to face this. It is unfortunate, but that's what we are doing. Okay, coming back to what I'm going to say is what I think since the topic of this discussion is about the issue is that where the Pakistan's economy and where we are. For the past 2 days or 2.5 days, you have been listening to what the issues I'll highlight or categorize as social sustainability and economic sustainability, how these will take Pakistan's economy forward. Now, today in this session, we are going to talk about the environmental sustainability, because it is critically linked with the other two sustainability issues. If we don't take all these things, the three dimensions in integration, I don't think we'll be able to have any sustainability in this globe. And environment is also critically important because it is not at the local, that it affects at the local level only. Some of the indicators will affect at the local level, some at the national, and then at the international level. As Abu Aqib Sahab said, that Pakistan is very high in terms of vulnerability index because we are not emitting that much of these GHG gases, but we are facing the consequences of the past 200 or 300 years, what has been happening on this globe. And that is as a result, the accumulation of resulted into climate change. Okay, so what I wanted to show you here, all these are the indicators of when at the international level we create an index for the environmental performance index. And these are first is the disability adjusted life year, or these are the different components which are taken into account when we bring in, we estimate this environmental performance indicator. And I've taken Iceland is in terms of environmental sustainability index is at the top, and where we stand, and that will identify, that will give you some idea that how far we are from if we want to achieve the best performers in the globe, in the world, or if you compare it with the region, how good we are in terms of that will also determine what is the way forward would be for Pakistan, if we want to achieve the environmental sustainability particularly. First is this disability adjusted life year. If you look at it as compared to the South Asian countries, Pakistan, India and Bangladesh, Pakistan is performing a little bit better. But in terms of China and Iceland, which I take as a target country, Pakistan's performance is much, desired. We need to do a lot in terms of health and improvement in the quality of life of the population. The second one is indoor pollution. The third one is outdoor pollution. And you can see Pakistan, how far Pakistan is if we have to achieve those targets at the international level or even at the regional level. We are not able to, we'll need a lot more effort to focus on this. The next one is basically, similarly we have the third one is access to sanitation, water system. SO2 is sulfur oxide emission, NOx, and then we have this is non-methane methane extraction, ozone layer depletion, water quality, water security, and then we have waste management, and then we all these different indicators. And if you compare, you'll compare these numbers here with that where Pakistan stands in terms of relative to South Asia and relative to Iceland, who is performing much better. You'll see only Pakistan is just slightly better in terms of disability adjusted life years with reference to South Asia, but not with reference to Iceland. And in terms of access to water, slightly better in terms of SO2 and NOx emissions. And biomass protection is one of the indicator here, and the CO2 emission equivalent, we are also saying, we are saying that we don't emit that much, but we face the consequences. So if given all these indicators, which are part of this index, which is computed at the international level to compare environmental performance of the countries, we can see that how behind we are. And that is the reason, if we look at this is for the 2018, the score of Pakistan is much smaller as compared to Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Pakistan's rank in the score, EPI score, environmental protection score, is much smaller as compared to these countries. And similarly, if we have disaggregated it at for 2018, it is first one is for the environmental sustainability, that health sustainability, and the ecosystem sustainability. And Pakistan is at number 8, and you can see where Pakistan stands relative to all the other countries in the region. So what all this is showing is that not only in terms of the region, but also at the global level, our performance in terms of environmental improvement needs much more resources as compared to what we are allocating or efforts we are putting into environmental conservation or environmental protection. Now, what are the major challenges? I'll take only a few of these as the major challenges which Pakistan is facing. Water pollution, water scarcity, I think has been discussed here before by the earlier discussions. But here, it is not only that water is not available, it is that the quality of the water, the quality which is whatever water we are available, even at this river level or the sea level, even if we have the desalinization, investment in desalinization, the water quality at the sea level and in your local streams and rivers, also the water quality is they going down substantially. And underground water, the availability and its quality has deteriorated because of these pollution, basically untreated water pollutant, the treated discharging of the untreated water into the water bodies. Similarly, we have here what do we need here? Definitely, I tried to draw the graph for the water availability per capita. And beyond 2005, when I started doing it for the till current, it was just showing a very horrifying picture. So I stopped it. I said, no, I don't want to show. I don't want to look. I don't want to think about it. But that is not the right way of doing it. But anyway, nevertheless. So what are definitely the measures we have to take, like efficient water use? I think one of the study which was presented, a PhD thesis from one of the students who has come up from PhD from Korea, he presented a paper at PIDE and he just discussed the two scenarios for the climate change, that if you say what will be the adverse impact of a 1 degree increase in the temperature on the major crops productivity or the yield, and the second scenario is comparing the two scenarios, that looking at the water use efficiency. The issue has been mentioned earlier by Abu Kifsab that it is about 50%. And what he said, that whatever the level of efficiency is, if you reduce that inefficiency by 40%, and you are emitting the GHG, which can result into 1 degree increase in the temperature, then those water conservation, benefits of the water conservation will dominate and they will take care of these adverse impacts of the climate change. So what it requires is that that doesn't mean that we should not make an effort into reducing the emissions, but at the same time, much more effort is required in terms of improving the water use efficiency. And then definitely another thing we have to compare is the monitoring system is critically important. One of the critical study was done by some person in Lahore showed that if we do just install the metering system, it improves the water use efficiency substantially. So these are local solutions which can be taken care of, taken to improve to meet the challenge of the water scarcity, and at the same time we have to take additional measures to improve the water quality, which is becoming a much more critical issue today. The next thing is, as I said, air pollution. Our air pollution definitely is the smog, I think these days, a critical issue of smog. What else? Every year we face this issue. This is a water pollution issue resulting in now it's a black carbon also issue which is which needs to be handled, and then according to the WHO's guidelines and there are our SPM level in the air is about 6 times higher than what is required there. And what this one means is that we have to definitely take measures to control the air pollution, and particularly those emissions which are taking place from the industries, and regulate and enforce the basically number of directions in which we have to take into account. What the sources are, we have to control, like for example the transport sector, the energy sector, and then we have to have these regulations and environmental solutions, the traffic system, and then how to regulate this traffic system, and particularly in the transport sector, what kind of regulations would be required to control the pollution, and also what kind of measures that would be useful. Well, maybe if it is like most of the time we are saying, basically you change, for the energy you are saying that you change the energy mix. That will take care of the GHG emissions. Similarly, in the transport sector, what type of transport you have. Now, in these days, earlier we used to have the mass transit system. Now we are going back towards the mass transit system, and at the same time, these hybrid cars, electrical car, if they come to Pakistan, can control some of these emission. The most critical problem here is the waste management. And the waste management is that in Pakistan it is claimed that only 60% of the waste has been collected, but whether it is properly disposed of is another issue which we really need to study about it. And the problem here is it is not only that we are not managing that waste, but also that waste is also presenting huge possibilities in terms of how you can be recycling, reusing, and it can be converted into beneficial or commercial entities also. So what we need to do is we have to give this how we are going to control and how we are going to convert them into profitable activities. Deforestation, definitely another critical issue. Then the climate change we have talked about, and climate change is basically dominating factor here. I'll come back to that maybe later. Now, here what I want to show you is basically this. I didn't make it because it's too difficult. It was too difficult to make it. I just took it from a study. What this one is saying is now all the countries have to meet the targets set by SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And if we look at this goal, one of these, the climate change, where is that? This is climate change in the center. Yeah, you see highlight also? Basically what you can say, all these goals are interlinked, and if we look into the SDG goal 11, which is talking about the urban resilience, I think the next one is, इसको highlight करना थोड़ा सा, या दिखाना, कैसे कर सकते हैं इससे? Pointing at अच्छा, this one. Okay. So here is this climate change, and if you look at the lines going in all the directions, this is climate change, this is part of the environment, related to environment, this infrastructure, and we have this terrestrial ecosystems, and we have oceans here, and we have here somewhere this urbanization issue also here, all this water here, all these are linked with each other, and all these climate change indicators, if you take all these indicators of environment, then you can see that you cannot have this economic or social, economic and social sustainability without taking into account or including these climate or environmental concerns into account. Because if you want to talk about like half reducing the poverty by half or ending the hunger, if there is a climate change which is threatening your food security, how would you do that? Which is the water which is not available, which is not going to produce more output, then how are you going to do that? So this is not having this sustainable development, which should also include the sustainable environmental developments, is necessary to have overall sustainable development in the country. Now here the next thing, I'll briefly, this is what I just wanted to show. One thing is that we are further away from what the countries have been doing, even if we compare it within the region. So if we are talking about the way forward, then we need to make a lot of effort and move into a number of dimensions there. Now here then what are the policy options is been given in the literature as okay, proper resource pricing, mostly market-based mechanisms, where we are not talking about the government involvement, is based market-based mechanism, but that may work partially, but they are not going to work or solve the problem entirely. Community involvement is another issue which needs to be addressed here, and I think one earlier, Simzia mentioned the community involvement is the critical and most important reason. The evidence from the South Asia and all the, I think all of you must have heard about this Chipko movement in India, which was like the females when they were cutting down the trees, the forest department was cutting down the tree, the females in from the local population which were depending on that forest, they just hugged the trees and they said they did not allow them to cut the trees. So the community involvement is critically important in terms of saving this. And then another important thing is the property rights issue. The property right issue can go either way because, for example, if you talk about the coast was talking about it's going to lead to environmental degradation if the property rights are not defined. He got the Nobel Prize. Then we have Eleanor Ostrom. She's talking about the community has an interest, they will protect these even if they don't have the property rights. So she also got the Nobel Prize for that. So the defining of the property rights may solve the problems of excess exploitation of the resources. And then we have these industrial emissions. We need to have some abatement policies for these issues. Now, there is, as I said in the beginning, that it is not only that at the national level or at the local level critically important, but at some points, like for example, we have in this case here, if I mentioned, this is industrial emissions abatement policies. And also I said that we must have the regulations to control the industrial emissions. Particularly, I'll just give you one example. Regarding the CPAC, I mean, CPAC is going to do the wonder in terms of like providing opportunities and everything. But one thing, what we must be very careful about it is wherever the Chinese foreign direct investment goes, most of the time the standards are local standards, which are imposed. Now, if we know our standards and we know how far we are implementing it, so if we do that, that may prove your hypothesis of providing a pollution heaven. So we have to take into account that this does not happen. So what we have to do is we have to make our environmental standards and regulations more stringent, and we have to do it because of the local, these international pressures also, because if we want to choose the trade and we want to survive in the global community, we have to make them. So we do that, so that this, even if this growth and economic potential is there, that is more environment friendly as compared to in the absence of that. Okay, so that is what I think that's where I'll end, and I think if there are questions, we'll talk about it later.
Thank you very much. One of the panelists is not here, so we have almost 20 minutes for questions and answers. We'd like to end on time around 4 o'clock. So we have about, I'd like to wind up for 5 minutes. So I have got two questions here, and both seem to be to the chair, because they have actually given me a sheet and it says to the chair. Is there an environmental impact analysis of CPEC being undertaken? I don't know whether there is an environmental impact assessment being taken, because the CPEC actually passes through so many areas, and under the current law, the environmental impact assessment is done by the local EPA. So it would be EPA of the northern areas and EPA of, but maybe Gilani Sahab would like to share some, because he was in the planning ministry, and where most of the CPEC action was taking place, whether a composite environmental impact assessment was undertaken or not.
With the permission of Chair, I share with you that as honorable professors have stated, when you enter into an international agreements, international standards should be applied, but in case of China, it is reverse all around the world. But some protective measures were taken. For example, we have an understanding when the traffic will flow from south to north, so more trucks will be there, and so more pollution will be there, and more carbon would be there. So 3% of the cost of the all road projects were earmarked for plantation along the roads. That was a protective measure, but not a quantitatively answered to the solution. As far the power plants were concerned, we put the one embargo which has a lot of cost in operation and also in the purchase of the equipment to buy third cycle technology, which reduce emissions as compared to the first generation technology to the extent of more than 75%. So that we applied on Binkasam, that we applied on Saiwan. But again, let me share with you, because it's a conference of the educated people and it's not a government conference. This question should have been asked by the Ministry of Environment, but Ministry of Environment is a government. Environmentalists, they are outside, and the professors, to me, as a person, questioned and asked why I have not done, and why, if I have done, what is wrong in that. And at this time, only protective measures could be taken, and it is true, when the traffic will flow, when the industry will come, it will create waste, and some of ideas originally are not so pleasant, which most of our economist team is suggesting in Planning Commission, that China will have industry to place it outside, because they do not want heavy metal industry there, because it pollutes their rivers, and pollution of rivers and water with heavy metal is not curable with the modern technology. So there are risks involved.
The second question is also addressed to the chair. What have you done so far as our climate, being a government officer? Because in our society, most people talk about the problems, the fewer are really working to solve them. The Ministry of Climate Change, one of the fundamental bases of global climate change negotiations is the CBDR, the Common but Differentiated Responsibility. And the reason that Paris happened, the first voluntary agreement of all the countries in the world, because in international law you can really impose, because there are sovereign limits to countries. So you cannot impose international law on any sovereign country. And it has to be a voluntary agreement. But under the CBDR, the Common but Differentiated Responsibilities, it is because the whole environment is one. In fact, in Persian, environment is called Muhit-e-Zist, something that surrounds all your life. So it's the Wizara Muhit-e-Zist in Iran. So, I mean, you must have heard of the butterfly effect, in which the flapping of the wings of a butterfly in New York affects the weather in Beijing. So we are all linked together in one global whole. So what did one ministry do? Well, it is not possible for one ministry to change the whole scenario. But like global donors, we approached the Green Climate Fund, and Pakistan was one of the biggest recipients of about $40 million for the GLOF, the Glacial Lake Outburst floods, in spite of great opposition from India. Because when you are trying to get this amount of money at a multilateral forum, India was objecting to it because it was located in the northern areas. So all these glacial lakes are located in the northern areas, which technically is a disputed territory, not from our point of view, but from India's point of view. So our diplomats at the Green Climate Fund actually negotiated this very well. We were not even on the board. We were an alternate member of the board. So that day we requested our Saudi friend not to be present in the meeting, so that we could chair the meeting, if we could come on the chair. So I mean, even these small things you might have. So I mean, we got these $40 million, which will be spread over the next 5 years in the Glacial Lake Outburst flood. Pakistan has a climate change policy, but there's a term in Pakistan which I don't like very much. It's called the knowing-doing gap. We know a lot, but we are unable to do a lot. There's some issues. I mean, although I'm a believer in the 18th Amendment, because Islamabad cannot go and clean up Karachi's beaches. It is Karachi's administration or the Sindh government which has to. So things are happening. We have got a lot of projects. The RED Plus project. Pakistan is one of the biggest recipients of the RED Plus, which is reducing emissions through degradation and deforestation. It's a World Bank project. So I mean, environmental issues do not happen in a day, and they are not possible to clean up in a day. We have got a lot of things, but everything requires enforcement. And that is where our national legal system is not very strong. I mean, I was talking about I mean, the linkage of everything, the butterfly effect. Karachi's water is stolen. We know about the water mafia. And most of the water is stolen from government pipes. It is not, I mean, although there's unregulated water mining also, but it is unregulated water which is stolen from the public hydrants. So a friend of mine, he was the assistant commissioner for Karachi Airport. As you know, there are deputy commissioners in Pakistan and assistant commissioners. So one day he raided the water hydrant, and the SHO, the policeman came to him and, sir, मेरे इलाके में ना तो कोई जुआ खाना है, ना कोई शराब खाना है. ये सारा पैसा जो कराची एयरपोर्ट पे खर्च होता है, जो VIPs आपके आते हैं, जो फूल उनको पेश किए जाते हैं, वो इसी वाटर हाइड्रेंट के पैसे से पेश किए जाते हैं. तो अगर आपने ये रोक दिया तो एयरपोर्ट का तमाम खर्चा बंद हो जाएगा. So it's a governance issue. How much money are we giving to our police? So the police station actually works on the water hydrant. So I mean, the linkages, the governance linkages are so immense that to expect any one ministry to be able to do miracles is very difficult. Now, a few questions to the other panelists.
Being a government officer, even this at secretary level, what you have done to the distribution mechanism of the water? Because even as per baseline evidence, हमारा per capita consumption अभी भी ज़्यादा है. So I don't think so. If we see the statistics, we are a water scarce country. So what are your response towards the distribution mechanism? Thank you.
कुछ इस तरह के सवालात आने चाहिए, और मेरा ये ख्याल है कि बहुत देर कर दी इस तरह के सवालात करने में सोसाइटी ने. डे वन से अकाउंटेबल होना चाहिए सारे लोगों को जो गवर्नमेंट से तनख्वाह लेते हैं, फिर गाड़ियाँ लेते हैं, दफ्तर लेते हैं. हम जवाबदेह होना चाहिए इस तरह, वो जलसा आम में नहीं लेकिन एजुकेटेड क्लास में. मैं आपसे शेयर करूँगा कि पानी के मसले में डेफिनेशंस का मसला सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट है, क्योंकि आप किसी परफॉर्मेंस को किसी एक क्राइटेरिया से और किसी बेस लाइन से उसके साथ मेजर करते हैं। सबसे आपने पहले बात एक की थी दूसरे सवाल में एसडीजीज़ की, वो भी पानी से लिंक है। जब एसडीजीज़ बन रहे थे तो सबसे बड़ा मेरा एक इख्तिलाफ राय था एमडीजीज़ पे, उस पर लिखा था बेटर वाटर फैसिलिटी। बेटर वाटर फैसिलिटी नहीं होती, पानी या सेफ होता है या अनसेफ होता है। इट कैन नॉट बी बेटर कि जी इसमें आर्सेनिक तो नहीं है, फ्लोराइड है, या इसमें आर्सेनिक भी है, फ्लोराइड भी है, लेकिन ये आपको 10 साल में मारेगा, फ़ौरन नहीं मारेगा। इट हैज़ टू बी सेफ और अनसेफ। तो वो केस मैं एशिया की तरफ से लड़ रहा था कि हमें उसमें एक मसला पेश आ जाएगा कि एक स्टैटिस्टिक्स हमने जारी की हुई है पाकिस्तान से कि 87% को हम बेटर वाटर सप्लाई दे रहे हैं। द मोमेंट सेफ वाटर पे जाएंगे शायद हम 15 या 16% पे आ जाएं और बहुत बुरा लगेगा, लेकिन आ जाना चाहिए, सच बोलने की ज़रूरत है, क्योंकि सेफ वाटर की लिमिट पे आना है। इसी तरह से डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन के और एफिशिएंसी के ऊपर भी डेफिनेशन का मसला है। वो डेफिनेशन ये है कि जब हमारे खेतों में पानी जाता है तो लोग ये आमतौर पे समझते हैं कि जो पानी ज़मीन के नीचे चला गया वो ज़ाय हो गया। वो ज़ाय नहीं हो गया, वो ग्राउंड वाटर स्टोरेज है। और उसकी एफिशिएंसी को कैलकुलेट करते हैं कि अगर वो आप देखें जो एग्रीकल्चर, मैं फेडरल डायरेक्टर जनरल वाटर मैनेजमेंट भी रहा हूँ, मेरा महकमा भी मुझसे बड़ा खफा था कि आप तो हमारी वो रोटी रोज़ी के पीछे बढ़ गए कि वो जितनी एफिशिएंसी माइनस करते हैं ना, उस तरह तो पानी सिफर पहुँचता है खेत तक कि इतने % लॉस हो गया फलान जगह पे, इतने % लॉस हो गया फलान जगह पे, और आखिर में वो जो पानी पहुँचता है खेत में वो शायद फसल के लिए नहीं है, वो तो फसल हवा में पैदा हो गई है। तो वो एक एफिशिएंसीज का मैटर है। और इसमें एक वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट भी था, क्योंकि देयर इज़ अ लॉबी जो कि कहती थी कि वाटर कोर्सेज को लाइन करो, कैनाल्स को लाइन करो, ऐसे करो वैसे करो, ये सारी चीज़ें वो भी फ़ायदेमंद हैं बाद सैंडी साइल में जहाँ ग्राउंड वाटर सलाइन है। लेकिन ओवरऑल अगर आप डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज़ को देखेंगे तो वो तो ग्राउंड वाटर रिचार्ज कर रहे हैं पैसे खर्च करके, हम रिचार्ज रोक रहे हैं पैसे खर्च करके। तो बहुत कुछ हुआ है। एक छोटी सी मिसाल दे दूं, पाकिस्तान बना था 62 मेगावाट से, आज हम 23,000 मेगावाट में हैं। बहुत कुछ हुआ है और बहुत कुछ होने वाला है।
Thank you. I could not really understand the first question of Mr. Ilyas. I think it was regarding coal-based power plants, how CPEC is bringing in. I mean, I think it's not the coal, it is the kind of technology that you're using. Their technologies, the critical, the supercritical technologies. Not all coal-based plants are equally bad. If you're using bad coal, but we have our own coal. We cannot, I mean, you all know about the account deficits and the trade imbalances. So if you continue importing fossil fuels from abroad, you will have other problems also. So I believe that using coal is our requirement. I'd like to recognize the presence of Dr. Tariq Banori, who is far more eminent and far better suited to be the chair of the session, but I guess he was busy elsewhere, so he could not come. And I also need to wind up this discussion in the next 6-7 minutes. So kindly, can we have a few more quick questions?
Assalamu alaikum. This is Zia Ashmi. I work in the Global Change Impact Studies Center. My question is addressed to respected Nasir Gilani. You rightly actually pointed out all the relevant problems or issues related to our water. And luckily we recently got our water policy approved. But the next real question is its implementation. So my question is basically focused on what is the implementation plan of the government now, and I mean how it is going to link with the existing climate change policy. Thank you.
एक तो अच्छी खबर आपने खुद ही सुना दी कि 40 साल के बाद वाटर पॉलिसी बन गई प्लानिंग कमीशन के इंटरवेंशन से। लेकिन मैं आपको शेयर करता हूँ, उसमें टाइम इसलिए ज़्यादा लगा कि ये कोई हेल्थ पॉलिसी, एजुकेशन पॉलिसी नहीं थी। इस पर आसन इकबाल साहब, फार्मर मिनिस्टर साहब की मुझसे कोई कम से कम 30 बार बात हुई। वो कह रहे थे इतना टाइम क्यों लगा। मैं कहता सर, जब एजुकेशन पॉलिसी बनाते हैं तो कोई कंटेंशियस इशू नहीं है। हर आदमी कहता है कि जी एजुकेशन में जीडीपी एक्सपेंडिचर 2.5 से 4.5 कर दें। हर आदमी कहता है कि जी वो जो जेंडर गैप है वुमेंस का, लेडीज़ का नहीं आने का, वो ज़रा कम कर लें। कितना कम कर लें? ज़्यादा काम कर लें। अच्छा वो जो बच्चे स्कूल से बाहर रह गए हैं उनको वापस ले आएँ, जो स्कूल में गए नहीं उनको ले आएँ, हायर एजुकेशन को पैसे दें। हेल्थ में भी ऐसा ही है। पानी के अंदर, पॉलिसी के अंदर कंटेंशियस इशू है कि पानी आपने किसी सेक्टर से छीन के किसी को देना है और किसी को बताना है कि तुम्हारा सेक्टर इकनॉमिकली एफिशिएंट नहीं रहा, यहाँ उस पानी से वो जीडीपी पैदा नहीं होता जो मैं दूसरी जगह से पैदा करना, या उसके ह्यूमन राइट्स ज़्यादा हैं, वो वाटर अर्बन वाटर है वहाँ देना है। इसीलिए इंडिया जैसा मुल्क जिसने 6 महीने में कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बनाया था, वाटर पॉलिसी उन्होंने भी 22 साल में बनाई थी, तो वाटर पॉलिसी बन गई। सेकंड चीज़ आपकी इंपॉर्टेंट है कि उसकी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन प्लान क्या है। इस वाटर पॉलिसी की सबसे बड़ी खूबी ये है कि इसमें इम्प्लीमेंटेशन प्लान ऑलरेडी वो दे दिया गया। पहला मार्क ये दिया गया है कि कुल पीएसडीपी का 10% अलोकेट कर दिया जाएगा वाटर के लिए और इसको बढ़ाकर 20 कर दिया जाएगा, और इस साल भी 10 की बजाय 11% से स्टार्ट कर दिया हमने। सेकंड कि पीएसडीपी की कोई भी रिडक्शन आएंगी वाटर सेक्टर पे नहीं लगेंगी। पीएसडीपी की रिडक्शन 1050 से कम होकर 640 पे आया, वाटर सेक्टर पे नहीं आया। दूसरा, क्रिटिकल प्रोजेक्ट्स भी इसमें लिख दिए हैं हमने कि ये क्रिटिकल प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं जिनको हमने करना है। लेकिन अभी भी एक ज़रूरत मौजूद है, वो सेक्टर है सॉफ्टवेयर का, रिफॉर्म्स का, वाटर कास्टिंग का, वाटर रेवेन्यू का, नॉन रेवेन्यू वाटर्स का और बिहेवियरल चेंज का। उस पर बहरहाल काम करना पड़ेगा और वो बहुत ज़रूरी है।
Thank you, Gilani Saab. With apologies to Dr. Rehana and Dr. Asim Zia, I am told by the organizers that I have to wind up within 3 minutes. So, no questions were addressed to you. So, thank you very much, PIDE, and thank you very much, the Society for Development Economists, for inviting me and the panelists here today for this very important session. We can, I mean, this is just a 1.5 hour session, while the issue demands far greater engagement, the environmental issues in Pakistan. Mr. Nasir Gilani spoke about wetlands, which is an issue close to my heart. And although he's an engineer, wetlands are a non-engineering solution to water shortage. Even China, which has got the Three Gorges Dam, has got more capacity in non-engineering solutions downstream of the Three Gorges Dam in wetlands, because wetlands provide not only water storage, they provide recreational opportunities, they provide fish and other opportunities for development. Dr. Asim Zia, who is the youngest panelist amongst all of us and will probably face climate change much more than the people who are above 60 here, he reminded me of an economist who taught me once at the Services Academy, and we all called him the prophet of doom, Professor Rashid. And I'm also reminded of Maynard Keynes' famous line that in the long run we'll all be dead. He was speaking about food security, food challenges. And the other day I was reading that more than 800 million people, the World Bank report states, the hotspots in South Asia, that more than 800 million people will be affected by climate change in South Asia. And for every 1 degree rise in temperature, the productivity of wheat moves forward towards the north by 100 kilometers. He spoke about Syria, the drought, and the day before yesterday I was seeing a documentary on the Mayan civilization, how the Mayan civilization collapsed because of the lack of water. The capital that Akbar built at Fatehpur Sikri also had to be abandoned because of shortage of water. So perhaps Brazil should remember the fall of the Mayan Empire. Dr. Rehana, before you spoke about EPI, I thought it was the extended program on immunization. So you had a lot of statistics in your presentation, and whenever I see so many statistics, I am reminded by the fact that, by the joke, that if a person had 1 foot on the stove and another in the freezer, the economist and the statistician would say that on the average is quite comfortable.
I didn't say that.
You were saying that we need to regulate the transport sector, you need to regulate the livestock sector. You forgot that you need to regulate the bureaucracy also, because that also is a great producer of greenhouse gases. So thank you very much, and I believe I've overshot my time, and it was a pleasure being here, and hope to continue the discussion some other time.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming over and showing your interest in this particular topic. And thank you, the panelists, for so exciting thoughts. Before we wind up here and start off the next session, I now request the chair of the session to present a sheet as a token of appreciation to the panelists. So I will start off with the Nasir Gilani Saab. Now I request Professor Asim Zia Saab. Now I request Dr. Rehana Siddiqui. And now I request Dr. Rehana Siddiqui to give the token of appreciation to the chair.